So good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on whichever part of the world we are in. Welcome you all to this very fantastic evening where we are discussing an incredibly important topic on reimagining the success of STEM mothers and what it takes to go beyond the pipeline. So I am Sanchari Banerjee, the moderator of the session. In one line, I'm a scientist, a leader, a mother, and I love baking, dancing, and mentoring. And today, I'm joined by three extraordinary women, Casey, Megan, and Chavi, who have thrived in their roles as a leader, a professional, and a mother. So let's welcome all three of you. And with much further ado, I ask you three to introduce yourself. So Casey, would you like to go first?
Love to. Thank you so much for having us, Sanchari. I'm Cassie Leonard. I am located in Seattle, Washington, so it's morning for me. And I have 16 years of aerospace engineering experience. I grew up as an engineer, always knew that's what I wanted to do. I have a bachelor's from UCLA and a master's from University of Sheffield in England. So I moved around the world a bit. And then in 2022, I chose to step out of traditional STEM careers, and I became an executive coach for women and mothers in STEM. And I am now an author and a publisher in that space as well.
Hey, welcome to the panel, Casey. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Oh, and I have two boys.
Okay, that's wonderful. So, Chavi, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sanchari, and it's so wonderful to be amongst all of you. So I'm Chavi. I'm joining from Pune in India, and I did my PhD from Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore in India. And then I was in the US. I worked as a postdoc at NIH in Bethesda, and during that time, I also worked in marine biology laboratory in Woods Hole and in marine labs in Chile as a visiting scientist. And then I took a break. I moved from US to Europe, where I stayed for a couple of years. And this was a time that I visited a lot of museums there, and I got very fascinated with education through museums, both in arts and in sciences. This is also the time that I actively started working with STEM peers. I got a grant from them, and I started what we called as a Khirki initiative. Khirki is a Hindi word for a window, where the idea was to bring not just the science, but the scientific enterprise to the young learners, and largely through arts and storytelling. Then I moved back to India in a team manager role where I was working with biologists and engineers in my team. And this was an education based project, following which I was a project lead with the museum, and I curated an interdisciplinary exhibitions, and that is when I really got in touch with the social aspects of working with complex problems. And it was not until the next international grant that I got, where I developed interdisciplinary program on water education, where I worked with some excellent people who understood the social aspects also of education. And from then on, I really started realizing the dream that I had of bridging science and society and through education. And very soon after that was when I became a mother. And since then, I have been very engaged, very actively engaged, and I'm very excited to be in the space of addressing complex problems through science, through art, through systems thinking. And now I speak at workshops. I design learning experiences, both in professional and also in voluntary spaces. Yeah, so that's me.
Great to have you here, Chavi, for the discussion. And just to let everyone know, Khirki has been a very big initiative and very important initiative, I will say, in an Indian perspective. So that brings to Megan. Please, Megan.
Hi, My name is Megan Wendell. I'm located in Virginia, in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. I have worked in engineering and STEM careers for in the past 16 years now. And much of that, I was pretty quickly thrust into a leadership role due to lack of, folks, filling those opportunities. And so in jumping to that kind of thing very quickly in my career, had to learn how to use skills that I had from my engineering background and then also stemming from my neurodivergence and figure out how to apply those in ways that would help myself, help my team, help my project, and learning about a lot about myself in the process, being in that kind of a role so immediately. These days I act as a program manager, and in my spare time, my non-work life, I'm really involved in my kids' activities. I have one son and one daughter, and they're both very involved in scouting and in sports. And I have loved the building of kind of the next generation in that sense, both on the sports field, and getting to build the teamwork skills and things like that come with that, the learning from failure and pushing forward. And then on the scouting side, I particularly love when I get to lead a STEM activity. Like a recent favorite this past year that I got to do with my daughter's troop was take them to the National Air and Space Museum. And that was just such a highlight for the girls, and seeing them get excited about STEM really kind of helped drive home why I take the time to do things like that. So that's a little bit about me.
That's a wonderful little story that could motivate the young ones. That can always happen. And just to add on to it, I will say how my little one also gets motivated by every little thing that I do. Whether writing a book, she'll start writing her own, and that's just wonderful. So thank you everyone, and welcome once again to the panel. The conversations around women and in STEM, where we are talking about science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and medicine, all included. We all know they have unique challenges, and these are not new. It has been for ages. And when you add the motherhood flavor to it, then it becomes much more complex in this equation. So today, what we'll do is we will move beyond just a simple narrative of work-life balance. It's no longer a single narrative, as we know. And we'll try to explore the systemic barriers and how you three have thrived in that environment. It's not surviving, it is thriving that has happened for us. And let everyone know that there is a possibility. Of course, one must know, and it is specifically noted here, there is no one size fits all answers for everyone. So these are conversations that we start here at STEM Peers today. To give Casey and Megan a perspective, there are many mothers here at STEM Peers, and we all have had questions and queries. It's very important we start having these conversations, and no better way than to continue with these. So to begin, Chavi, Megan, of course, but Chavi, when there was a time I was juggling a lot between my work and my studies and everything, motherhood. I met Casey online in a conference, and from there I have been in constant touch with her. And that's what brought us together. And Megan is also a part of this global project. We wrote a book recently. I contributed. They were the main ones who had led it. It's called Beyond the Pipeline. And it has a very unique background to it. And Casey, if you can stress on the point of the leaky pipeline, which actually gave you thinking about this book and what has happened to women and why you thought of Beyond the Pipeline being the name of the book and the leaky pipeline subjective.
Yes. I'm so glad that STEM Peers is having this conversation and expanding the narrative of all these diverse and beautiful and messy and sticky and sometimes with glitter glue experiences of being a mom and a STEM professional. The reason I started the project of the Beyond the Pipeline, which originally was called Leaking, was I had leaked. I had left traditional STEM. And I felt almost like a failure. How do I still identify as a STEM professional? I have this master's in aerodynamics, and yet I'm not doing that work. Am I out? And so I started processing and figured out, no, I'm not. I'm still a STEM professional. I'm still amazing. I'm still adding value into the STEM space. And I wanted to start drawing on other people's narratives and start hearing other people's experiences of I'm not alone. There are so many beautiful pathways in STEM. There's so many different experiences. And the more we can share those experiences and really understand that any one journey that you're on is a great journey is going to be valuable. So I put the call out. It's almost exactly a year ago today. Um, and I got 17 authors almost immediately. We have 25 collaborators. So we did beautiful brainstorming sessions. We really brought in so many different thought pieces. We've added in the life as a stay-at-home parent who has a STEM degree. We've added in the life of once you hit that certain age and you're experiencing these perimenopause challenges or symptoms while not being supported because you're in a male-dominated space. There's just so many, this plethora of like, are you in academia? Are you industry? Are you something else? What is that choice? And bringing that all together is just so much fun and so inspiring. And it's become so much more than I ever thought it could be, including bringing Sanchari and Megan together for the first time today. And then, of course, because it's brainstorming, it's collaborative, the name Beyond the Pipeline fell out of so many conversations we had about the narrative of the leaky pipeline and how that felt very constrictive. It was a narrative that was designed in the 1980s to start to articulate, and it had a lot of value at that point to explain that women are not making it through the professional path that we were supposed to once you get that STEM degree. But now it's evolved. We're 45 years past that original point. We're in, we understand that there is some value in progressing through a professional job, but there's a lot more choice. There's a lot more freedom. And anyone who chooses to leave a traditional, like most prescribed path in STEM is not failing. We're still fantastic STEM professionals, and we need to move beyond that original narrative.
That's wonderful, Casey. And to know that leaky pipeline is not just subject to a it's not geographically located, it's there everywhere. Chavi, could you add the Indian perspective? I'm not sure how the term leaky pipeline, how often it is used in the Indian perspective, but it definitely exists a lot. Uh, to give a context, I think we are just considering right now the work people who have graduated and entered the workforce. That takes away all the other factors in India why women can leave the STEM workforce. Yes, Shem. You're muted.
Yeah, sure, Sanchari. It was very nice to hear from Casey to set the context for the work in the book as well. So I think an important point to look at the leaky pipeline or to look at the pipeline in the Indian context is the intersectionality, which especially is evident in a place like India where there is so much diversity. So it's worth it to take one step back, and I would just set a little bit of the context because, and you will see later why I'm saying this. So there's a section of women in India who we know are working to make ends meet, and many of them, however talented they may be, would probably never even enter the so-called science pipeline. Now, in India, along with the class division that exists, the society is also divided according to what we call as the caste, CASTE. And this is a division that one is born into, and you cannot change ranks. So some people, and women in this case that you're talking about, may have a generational privilege of being born in an upper caste family. And being enabled and allowed to educate themselves simply because where they are born. And therefore, the experience of the relative ease of access and awareness about the scientific careers itself follows from there. So, as a society, if we want to talk about this pipeline, it's very important to consider that at the very beginning, there's likely a leak already happening where a lot of the lower class and lower caste women, and that is where the intersectionality lies, are not even they're not even able to enter this pipeline. Um, so what we're largely talking about when we talk about the pipeline in Indian scenario is upper caste and middle or upper class women who are able to at least aspire to the scientific careers. And there are, of course, exceptions, but that is general trend. In terms of the leakiness of the pipeline, there are several similarities of how it may exist in other spaces. That there's a steady loss of women as scientists as they move from higher education, PhD, to faculty positions, to senior scientific careers. And in India, especially the ones which are positions of power, like members of academies and advisory boards of institutes, and especially government advisory boards, because in India, a lot of the funding in science is still government funding. So there, the participation can be as low for women as 6% of the ones who have been able to come into the pipeline at all. And as everywhere else, the sharpest leak, so to speak, happens at the mid-career level because of the social and cultural demands that the women have, which are more than on the men. And it is, if one is able to, I would say, has the privilege to outsource some of the work that comes with these demands, especially the caregiving work, and they are able to manage the cultural unacceptance that follows, then it is feasible for them to progress. So in terms of the caregiving aspects, again, the Indian context is slightly peculiar because one, obtaining assistance in caregiving. So actually caregiving is largely considered women's job, and obtaining assistance in that, which also is mixed with long hours of working, tends to contradict what is expected from women at home. Then in India, caregiving is largely a family affair, and many people even today move from nuclear families to joint family mode. And that brings in the issues of mobility, because very often the jobs are not in the villages or in the spaces where the extended family stays. And in India, uh, one state to another, the languages differ. So uprooting the elderly from where they are and moving them becomes a very hard task because of a large language barriers that exist. Then we do not have a good network or a good quality of daycare facilities. There are even the larger institutes, even till today, are fighting to have good uh, caregiving, childcare facilities. So it's if one has it, it's an exception, but it's not a norm. Um, and then again, once again, the women who are employed in these caregiving facilities often there's no formal training, and often they tend to be from the lower caste, which creates a cultural issue with the families of the women who are scientists, whether they want to send the children to be tended to by the women of the lower caste. So, the issue, while it may seem like you left it behind, comes back to you. And of course, if you're privileged, you have such supportive everything, still the management of the help and the assistance that you get is another woman's job. And then if men who are woke and who participate, if they contribute to these spaces, they face same challenges because it is not expected of them in their profession spaces. And this kind of mid-career issues then go into also senior levels. And whatever I read about the seniority level, where it is about permanent positions, promotions, and awards and recognitions, there the issue becomes more subjective. It's about personal rapport. It's about trust, because a lot of these awards and recognitions come through nominations. It's also about the dignity that comes, with acknowledging somebody's labor. So whose labor, whose lived experiences are acknowledged? Those kind of questions start to come up again. So this is sort of the way the leaky pipeline looks. And to add just a bit to that, this is also a narrative. A critique of how this leaky pipeline exists or is talked about today in Indian context is also that use the words which are used saying that the women who fall out of the pipeline, they do not take up leadership roles as if those are the only leadership roles available, or take on less demanding jobs as if caregiving is a less demanding job, or have lowered aspirations as if seeing uh, uh, like inspiring the youth is a lowered aspiration.
Chavi,
So
I'll just start.
I'm gonna just take 30 seconds and finish this thought, Sanchari. Please let me. So what I'm trying to say at a deeper level, it is the dignity that keeps coming up, the dignity of labor. And also these narratives are largely in public spaces made by women who are staying in the pipeline. Where are the voices of the ones who are outside the pipeline? And that is where I think this book that you're talking about is really important, because that is the voices that it is bringing together. So yeah, that's what I want to say, and end it there.
Yeah. So, Chavi, I think you put it beautifully. But many of the problems, I think, that were also told, it's not, I think, an Indian context. It becomes a leaky pipeline, which is there throughout, that is present. And coming to you, Megan, what we understand is that the systems, whether in India, whether in US, anywhere, were never designed in mind keeping us there, whether it is women or whether it is mothers. And it is something that, whether you say it is a social constraint, whether you say it is because of, our biological constraints, things have never been there for us. So, how do you also put the context that systems were never designed with neurodivergence in mind? And how do you put the stress on the point of motherhood and mental wellness? And just to give context to all the listeners, Megan has written wonderful wellness moments there throughout the book, and it brings out the thoughts associated at different times a mother can have, a woman can have at different trajectories of her life. Please, Megan.
Yeah, so I want to start off by saying that, you heard me say my background before. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm just someone who has had certain experiences at different points in my life that have made it clear to me that as I go through my leadership journey, that I want to be I want to advocate for myself. I want to advocate for people with brains like mine. I want to advocate for people with brains that are different than mine, because there's so much, out there, and everybody has so much to offer that we should be making spaces where all different kinds of minds are celebrated and can thrive. In terms of, neurodivergence, what this looks like is, understanding what kind of brain you have, or what kind of brain this person that you care about and want to help thrive has, and how you can support them with that. Whether it's, an accommodation in the office, whether it's a different type of support at home so that they're not coming home to something that can, impact what they're able to do with their careers. I mean, and then, where this kind of lines in with motherhood in particular, and talking about systems that are not meant for you, I think of the fact that women are disproportionately diagnosed with things like neurodivergence when we hit that kind of peak motherhood age, and why that happens. When we are, from research that I've done, both for the book and just in my own journey, the narrative of ADHD, for example, is all about how it presents in young boys, where they're bouncing off the walls, can't pay attention. And yes, that is one presentation of it, but there's a lot of different things that can look like. And so as a result, little girls who typically, not always, but most little girls with ADHD, all the hyperactivity is in here. And so since it's not bothering anybody else, it's just bothering them, they're less likely to get referred for testing, and then they're less likely to then get that diagnosis that could help them be their best selves and achieve what they want to achieve and understand how their own brain works. And so how that ties into motherhood is that there is a lot of us who are discovering in our 30s and 40s that we have had ADHD all this time. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, suddenly everything makes sense. And that happens because you've, built these coping mechanisms. You've been able to get through school. Maybe you were even like labeled gifted when you were a child. You get through school, you get through all these times, and you can do small things to be able to thrive. But suddenly, you have more responsibility on your plate at work. You hit motherhood, so clearly more responsibility at home. Maybe you're going through grief. I lost my father right around the same time as all this was happening for me, so I had significant grief. And all these things hit at once, and suddenly those masks that you've managed to wear, those things that you've managed to have in place for yourself, they're just not enough anymore. You need a system that's going to be able to support you without you having to be anything other than your true self, and be able to bring what makes you to those spaces rather than having to hide it or act like somebody else in order to succeed and to move forward. So that's some of where neurodivergence and motherhood and finding ways to make systems better so that we can support all different types of minds to be able to thrive.
Okay, that's I will not say good to know, but at least that's something that people who are going through it will understand, and where to seek the right help will be there. Yeah. So Casey, now I think in general, I think now we just talk about how we have grown. And me, I have been in India. I have done my PhD postdoc. I went to Denmark. It's a wonderful country. Denmark is for a working mother. When you compare to India, you will find whether you have a respect as a working mother, you have the right infrastructure in place. I was really marveled at every design just to push my kid from the home to the kindergarten, or just the time of the schools and stuff. Of course, coming back to India, I have again my parents, taking care and babysitting. So that's the equity and the logistic parts, which makes a big difference. So, Casey, how has exactly this motherhood helped you or hindered you in the career transition? Or do you see it as something that has made you go forward? Because at least for me, I know I got a huge boost in myself, morale. Oh, now I'm a mother, I need to do more. And okay, whether I'm doing more or not, that my daughter later says that, okay, no, this is not right or wrong. But how do you think in your career transitions it has progressed?
I think that motherhood, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I absolutely love being a mother. I've gained skills from being a mother. I've learned, I think I was a pretty passive, calm 20 something. I just went with the flow, easygoing. And then I had to learn, like when my 4-year-old doesn't get their shoes on, they don't get out the door for 15 minutes. And so I had to learn to say, get your shoes on and be very directive. And sometimes you learn these new skills and you find out you have these other aspects of your tool suite that were always available to you, but you hadn't been drawing on them before. And I've taken a lot of those into the workplace. And similarly, I was a senior leader at my aerospace corporation. And so I took some of those project management and system integration skills and brought them back to the house. And so using the multiple layers and the intersectionality of all these different aspects of my life and allowing them, at least the skills part of them, to merge has helped navigate any transition. And transitions can mean so many things. It can mean leaving college and going to your first job. It can mean kids came home from because there was COVID in the schools and you have them at home staring at you for 16 months. It can mean taking that promotion. So I like to draw from all the skills that I have from motherhood, from the education that I worked so hard to get, and then from all those life skills that you build at the workplace. And when you can draw those all together, any transition can have a thoughtful, logical, intentional aspect to it. Things like giving yourself grace. I think I've learned that from being a mother. So allowing yourself some time to let the last job sunset and the new job to have some energy and give it time that it deserves. Giving yourself the allowance to really do some research and to learn. Because when I became a mother, I did some research. There's books out there on like how to get kids to sleep. Not that they work, but they're like you can do some investment of your time to learn and really feel like you have at least some tools to move forward and be successful. And then managing doubt. I think I learned from motherhood and that mom guilt that you can manage doubt in the workplace. I think in the workplace, it's normally called imposter syndrome or has a few other names, but the mom guilt was what got me first. And so learning how to practice positive self-talk, recognizing when I had saboteurs that were trying to take me down and finding my tools to manage those has helped me in transition when I'm trying to be successful and thrive.
That's really wonderful. And that's how, yes, motherhood teaches. You take all the skill sets and you do it together. Following on that, Chavi, would you like to say how motherhood has intersected with your professional identity?
So I think it is after or around or in anticipation of motherhood. More that I have actually moved from a formal space of work, and I've been exploring a more informal space of work, which includes working for myself, working in consulting positions, and exploring the power equations from that space and redefining impact from working from those spaces. So I think that has been one major way in which the professional identity has taken new life.
Okay. And I'll take it that it has taken in a better way for you. I mean, every way is a better way where we thrive. It's not about,
Yes,
yes,
yes, yeah, absolutely. I think it gave me the courage to do that.
yes, yes, definitely, definitely. So, Megan, would you like to also answer that question, that how has motherhood intersected with your professional identity?
Yeah, I mean, it intersects so much. There's so many skills that apply to both, and um, the the one that comes to mind was one story in particular that comes to mind is how there was a week where I got to do a special training at work related to, because I was a first time manager of people. I had direct reports for the first time, so I had this opportunity to take this training called Inside Out Coaching that was all about like how do you talk to your employees, especially if there's something happening that like is less than ideal, shall we say, and there's an opportunity for improvement either at an individual level or at a team level, and like different ways to coach individuals to get to that point. And then sometime that week, I also, was, doom scrolling before bed and reading, parenting articles about this, that, and the other, because my children were still very young, but starting to get into that like terrible twos type of age. And so, a lot of stuff was popping up for me of like how to manage your child's emotions. And, my son has some neurodivergence too. So stuff like that pops up in my feed often. And I'm reading this article talking about this concept of gentle parenting where, you're not necessarily saying, no, you can't do that to your kid, or, oh, you must do this. It's, well, what do you think about that? Like, how do you think you do this? I'm like, this is the same thing, but for grownups and children. And so a lot of those like approaches to problem solving and partnering with the person that you're trying to problem solve with, whether it's your child or a colleague or an employee or even a superior, just working together with people to achieve whatever your end goal is, whether it's personal or professional. That's something that comes to mind, and for me in particular, with how the two have intersected and helped each other, because I'll be thinking of a peer in the workplace sometimes when I'm talking to my kid, and I'll be talking to my peers thinking about, well, how would I approach this if it was Connor, and things like that. So it's some of that is what comes to mind when I think of how the two have intersected and helped me be better at both as a result.
That's a wonderful way of putting it also, and the wonderful way of seeing when you try to, manage both the things and see the perspective when you need to make things work. Chavi, I'll come back to you with the first question again, what I asked Casey, is what helped or hindered you in your career transition? And I know that, and we are looking at, again, the pivot is motherhood here. So from you, that Indian context and is very important for the listeners to understand how that has helped you thrive in the ecosystem.
So I think it sort of brought me face to face with mental health, and it was, I would say, another point, not the only point, but another point where, because children are very perceptive. So I knew that I cannot, if I'm being untrue to myself, I am, it's just not gonna run. So and I think that was really important, because from prioritizing mental health, you start getting the strength and to be true to yourself in at home and at work, and you start to make choices in that way, what kind of work you want to do, what kind of people you want to work with. It becomes, and you start to do it more unapologetically. And
That's
all of these things in Indian scenario are actually huge, because we don't really talk about a lot of this openly in India to a large extent. So I think that is one thing, and I think the other is this understanding the dignity in different kinds of work, and sort of really internalizing that. I think those two things really stood out.
I think the word of unapologetic is a very nice word and very well put, which everyone should think of it that way. Casey, do you see yourself in or out of STEM, or even does that matter? STEM is STEM, no matter you are technical, whichever field you are. So how do you define it?
I'm in. I I got a degree. I learned project management skills. I learned problem solving. I learned how to be analytical. I learned how to do the design, build, test philosophy. You don't just try it once and then it's done. Those are skills that no matter what you do, if you become an elementary school teacher, if you become a stay-at-home parent who makes fun, cool projects for their child, no matter what, you are STEM forever and ever and ever. And so I love the conversations I've been having since this book came out with a lot of different people about the traditional pathways and the non-traditional pathways. And I think we just need to blow that all out of the water and get rid of the narrative of non-traditional pathways. Everything you do in STEM is STEM from now on. Congratulations.
Okay, wonderful. Megan, anything to add to it?
I just want to amplify everything that Cassie said, because the fact that it doesn't have to look the same for everybody to still be value added and still be an opportunity for that person to thrive. Why does it have to look one certain way? That's one of those systems we talk about, that systems not being designed for neurodivergence. What I wrote about in the book, if there's only one way to progress through a career, that's not built for neurodivergence either. You have to celebrate that those pathways can look very, very different. Whether or not I'm in or out of STEM right now is much more cut and dry, perhaps, than Cassie's, but it shouldn't be a debate. Just because I'm still working for a technology company holding a title of program manager over a very technical program that doesn't make me any more or less in STEM than Cassie, as she mentioned. And I wholeheartedly agree with what she said there. And the same thing goes for the fact that things like neurodivergence are one of many, many reasons why it's valuable to just throw out the pipeline idea and not only acknowledge, but champion and support that everybody's career is going to look different. And isn't that just so cool? Right? So
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So now I have an open question for everyone. As mothers and professionals, what are the solutions we can look out for? Of course, this is very specific. Like, my experience has been an international experience, and from that, I can say that you should be able to trust your surroundings to build a village, to build a support system. And what kind of trust, what kind of village depends upon the cultural place where you are in. Um, it can be hard in a system like India, where I'm still struggling, talking to my management, but places where there are opportunities, we must have a look out of it. So, Megan, would you like to go again?
yeah, I mean, I think what we're doing right now is one of those solutions. You talk about it. You don't pretend that things aren't the way that they are, but you also don't pretend that there's nothing you can do about it either. Because there's always something that you can do, both for yourself on an individual level and at a systematic level, to try to make change. And all that starts with talking about it and not sweeping things under the rug or pretending that everything's fine as it is. I, for the book's sake, when I was thinking about what I wanted to contribute to the conversation, I wrote a story in there and therefore have now admitted in print that I had a panic attack in the workplace. Who talks about that, much less puts it in published print? But it was important to me to tell a story like that because if we're all talking about the fact that this happens to us and that our experiences are all different, then we can find those solutions together. We can problem solve together and figure out how to make systems better for different types of people and different types of lives. So
Yeah, that's really that we should have the conversations going. Chavi.
So I think active mentoring for the people who are coming in, because from my experience, I think I didn't even know what questions to ask.
That's true.
That gap is, I think, is very important to fill, and that is somewhere where, like you said, Sanchari, that you're a mentor, right? So we need people like you to, and the book, everyone who's contributed to the book, right? So that is where I think a very important gap can be filled. On at a larger in a larger space, I think a culture of care over just that of productivity, that is important. And whether we talk about social divisions, whether we talk about divergence, um, whether whether we talk about homophobia, whatever we talk about motherhood, anything, any kind of marginalization eventually comes with social structures and social realities. So even as STEM mothers, we do not exist apart from that. It is important to recognize we are in those systems, and somewhere those complexities are also influencing us. So having that, not losing that touch with the society. And so I think those three.
Okay, wonderful. Casey.
I love everything Megan and Shavi have said. There's a really interesting infographic that Canada put out a few years ago. Susan Duckworth uh, amplified it with her making it a beautiful visual. But it has privilege in the center, it's a wheel, and then the outside is marginalization. And one spoke has men towards the center, near privilege, then women, and then non binary people. But that's just one spoke. And then there's higher education, STEM education, or elementary school education. And there's all these folks. And what Shavi was saying about LGBTQ or neurodivergence or color or economic background, we all come somewhere in this beautiful blend of different experiences. And some of parts of our identity come close to that very privileged center, and some parts of our identity are marginalized. And going back to what Megan said, where we feel safe, where we feel we are closer to having a place where we can speak about it, we should be sharing our stories. That's where we can start supporting other people who have a different blend of privilege and marginalization, different identities. And so when you hear stories that resonate with you because someone else had the space and the freedom to say it, that's going to keep motivating others to feel a little bit more like they're not alone. And there are other people who are working towards solutions or have found solutions so that they have the opportunity to also. And that goes back to mentoring when you feel you're safe to share your story with just one person, or speaking on a webinar, or going on a big stage, or publishing a book. Find that space where you feel like you can keep expanding that narrative.
Okay. That's cool. That's wonderful to know about the diagram by Canada.
Look it up. It's called The Wheel of Privilege by Susan Duckworth.
Okay, great. So one of the last questions. What one thing you wish you had known when you were just starting your journey as a mother and a professional? So maybe I just start myself first with the privilege of a moderator. So there was once in LinkedIn, I saw a post. Someone had given that, you don't have to attend all meetings in the offices, and you don't have to attend all meetings in the schools for your kid. You can't be there for all of them. You need to prioritize, just like how we prioritize work. And I got to know this much later when I was in Denmark, when my kid was like 4 or 5, something like this. And then I realized it really stuck with me from then on, that what I can go to, what I cannot, I can just say, no, I don't need to go to, which also helped me to, give time to myself, for myself, and made me not feel burnt out while balancing the two. So Shavi, would you like to have a go at it?
I think I would say what I said earlier. I wish I knew what questions to ask.
Okay, that's cool. Casey.
I wish I'd known that there were other mothers. It took probably 9 years to actually hear that other women in my office had children and that I wasn't the only crazy person trying to do all of this at once.
Yeah. Megan?
I wish I knew that it was okay to do things my way, that I didn't have to do something the same way somebody else did just because that was typical, or just because I saw that person getting accolades for doing it that way. That the way that I was going to want to approach things was probably going to be different from other people, and that didn't make it bad. That didn't make it worse. It just made it different.
That's wonderful. That's very cute. So I think as a summary for the panel, we are approaching the end of the session. I have a lined up questions as rapid fire questions, which can be one-liners, which can be a yes or no, or one-liner, not more than that. So the first question, Casey, equality versus equity, are they on par?
Equality is doing the same thing for everyone, no matter what their background. Equity is giving them dignity and recognizing that everyone needs different things to get to their milepost.
Brilliant. Chavi, if your journey could be summed up in one word, what would it be?
I think it will be a river flowing. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Megan, what's a piece of advice you'd give to your younger self when she was just starting out?
Don't be afraid to do it your own way.
That's wonderful. Casey, what is the one thing you do every week just for yourself?
I go play beach volleyball even when it's almost freezing.
Ah, okay, so you have a fun packed winter coming.
You've got to have a hobby.
Megan, work-life balance. Is it a myth or reality?
Myth, because that phrase implies that there's a specific way to do things that will work for everybody. And it
Mhm.
won't even look the same for one person all the time. It'll look different for the same person at different stages and whatnot. So I say myth.
Brilliant. Shavi, what is that one line you would like to give to the mothers of STEM peers?
I think I would say to radically and unapologetically accept themselves and support others similarly.
Yes, that's a wonderful way to say, to advocate and ally with everyone. Um, Casey, Chavi, or Megan, do you have any other resources you would like to share? Like, I have been part of STEM peers, Euro STEM peers, I've been part of Danwise in Denmark, I have been part of other mentoring associations which have helped me to, you know, understand the struggle, come forth, be the confident mother that I am today. Uh, how about any of you would like to volunteer some resources for that? Chavi?
I think the book reminded me of another book called Lab Hopping, which is in Indian context, and uh, is on similar lines, I would say.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I have to read the book then. Yes, lab hopping. Okay. Yes, Casey.
I have been following STEM peers for a long time, and I love what you're doing there or here. Mothers in Science is another international resource that's expanding this conversation. And then my coaching company is Elm Coaching. Elm stands for Engineers, Leaders, Moms, and Mentors. So we try to work right in this space. And you can always find us at elmcoaching.com.
Megan.
A book that comes to mind for me is by Wendy Koch called Making Flex Work. She had a second one come out called Reimagining Your Work, which is on my bookshelf back there behind me. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I'm very excited about it. But the reason I really resonated with her message in the first book was that, again, it spoke to the fact that these systems are made for a very specific idea of what a work day looks like and what being successful at work looks like. And it encouraged and helped me think about how to make my work day work for me rather than for me to try to fit into a specific mold just because it was the norm. And it helped me think of questions to ask myself and ask um, my leadership in order to get to that right answer for me. So that's another one that comes to mind for me.
Okay. Okay, that's wonderful. And we will have all these resources put out for our listeners in the comment section for the panel discussion. So, with this, the last, what's your go-to power song when you need a boost? Megan, do you have a go-to power song you really go for when you want that boost?
The one that immediately comes to mind is a song by Demi Lovato called Confident. You know, she keeps saying, what's wrong with being confident? Um, and yeah, that's the one that comes to mind for me for sure.
Chavi.
Um, so I think what comes to me is a Hindi song. It's called Jaage Hai De Tak.
Hmm,
It's a song about resilience. It's a song about dreams. It's a song about grief. It's
beautiful.
all in there.
Yes, beautiful song. Casey.
Mine is a song by Sia called Unstoppable.
Yes.
Works well on the volleyball court too.
For me, it is, I recently, my daughter made me hear a few lots of songs from a new movie of K-pop Demon Hunters. And they have Golden as a song, which is kind of right now giving me the motivation and the boost where I'm going for work or coming back. Yeah. So that brings to a very, very exciting talk to the end of it. And I'm very, very thankful to all three of you. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Chavi, for taking your time out and talking about it, a very important discussion, a very vital discussion, which of course doesn't end here, but we carry it forward. It at least gives us here at STEM Peers a starting point. We have been talking, it's not a starting point, I'll say a point to move ahead. Thanks to all the listeners of this discussion. We look forward to your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And finally, thanks to all the generous donors of STEM Peers who have supported the nonprofit organization. Hope our discussion will enlighten many listening to us, and we will continue conversations. And as everyone today here in the panel said, whether you're a scientist, an ally, a mentor, or a parent, we all have a role to play in building a more inclusive and supportive environment. So let's continue to advocate for one another, lift each other up, and challenge the outdated systems that don't serve us. Thank you very much. See you again another time in another recording. Bye-bye.